In the medieval village, a peasant woman weaves baskets in the muddy yard, while in the manor, a noble girl embroiders a golden crest. By the river, a leather worker strikes the hide with calloused hands. In a stone workshop, a noble boy marvels at colored glass bottles. Outside a stone house, a shoemaker teaches his son. In the study, a velvet-clad child paints a miniature manuscript with care. In a loud stone yard, an apprentice and master chisel marble blocks. Meanwhile, in a cool chamber, an engraver guides a noble girl's hand. Under the open sky, a peasant woman id her daughter weave wool. Inside the hall, a noble family admires gold jewelry by candlelight. Same era, different worlds. In every thread, every hammer blow, every pattern, the true face of the Middle Ages is revealed. For the common folk, illness meant lying on straw, hoping prayer would heal. Heal. Herbs were boiled and steam opened the breath. A peasant reached for leeches in a glass bowl, perhaps his final hope. But in the manor, things were different. A noble's pulse was taken by a velvet-robed doctor, another consulted star charts for re-rise. A child trembled on straw, while his mother prayed by his side. Meanwhile, the palace apothecary mixed lavender and violet into a silver bowl. In the woods, an herbalist dressed wounds, while in the manor, a silver tray caught blood from a cut vein. The peasants prayed outside churches, as nobles held rituals of Latin chants and incense. Illness was fate, but fate depended on your class in the Middle Ages. Traveling wasn't just about direction, it was about carrying your class. A peasant walked barefoot through mud, wrapping bread in a klotzke. A noblewoman rode behind silk curtains in a four-horse carriage. By the woods, peasants shared barley bread over a fire, while nobles traveled with attendants and guards. The peasant slept on straw in a stone-in courtyard, while the noble was welcomed with wine in a firelit manor. At border gates, peasants counted copper coins, while nobles passed with nothing but a seal. A peasant flinched at forest sounds alone, but nobles rode protected by armored guards. At night, the peasant shivered in a hay barn. The no had rested under silk sheets. Came road, two different worlds. Because in the Middle Ages, your class walked ahead of you. In the Middle Ages, you didn't need to speak to know who someone was. A peasant woman in a linen tunic bent over muddy fields, while a noble lady walked in a silk-embroidered gown across a stone courtyard. A leather worker sweated under his woolen jacket, as a lord moved solemnly in velvet robes within a grand cathedral. Children in torn tunics tumbled across the dirt, while noblemen dressed for feast before polished mirrors. The peasant drenched in wet wool, shed for shelter, an old woman stitched fabric by candlelight in her clay-walled home, while a young nobleman buttoned fur-trimmed garments before a mirror. A peasant patched clothes in the marketplace, but could never reach the world of gold-threaded tunics in noble halls. Because in the Middle Ages, clothing wasn't just a covering, it was a story of class. In the Middle Ages, justice wasn't the same for everyone. In the village square, a young man stood locked in the stocks, the weight of the crowd's stares pressing down. In the marketplace, a woman walked with a wooden sign around liar, neck marked as a liar. Meanwhile, within the stone walls of a castle, a noble whispered with a monk, his crime handled quietly. In soft cathedral light, another noble knelt, forgiven not with punishment, but with prayer. While peasants were stoned in public, the elite were freed with a scroll bearing a golden seal.
The detail you can
Some waited in
achieve with these
chains,
new German
others
tools
rewrote
is
their
quite
fate with ink. And in the square, the village priest stood alone, declaring punishment from a parchment scroll. In the Middle Ages, justice wasn't just about guilt, it was about your place in the world. One gave a pouch of copper coins to the priest, the other offered gilded, ring candlesticks for blessings. The faith was shared, but the path was divided. In the morning, the peasant's meal meant barley porridge. For the noble, it was lamb pie. Peasants knelt on cloths spread over dirt floors to eat. Nobles dined in stone halls, on plates edged with gold. Bumetni sohbet tarzında yaz, while the noblewoman smiled as her maid laid silk over her shoulders. Bread was dark and hard for the poor, soft and white for the rich. While the village stew simmered slowly over a clay hearth, the manor's meats were served in polished copper pots, spiced and rich. The peasant shared a single wooden bowl, passing the spoon hand to hand. The noble enjoyed each bite with a silver fork and fine linen napkin. Meat was a dream for the commoner, maybe a bite a week. But noble tables held venison, goose, and duck in abundance. Dessert? In the village, dried apples would suffice if there were any. In the manor, tarts came dressed in honey and almonds. Same age, same son. Yet they lived at different tables entirely. They prayed to the same God, but knelt in very different places. While peasants bowed on dirt floors between cold stone walls, nobles lowered their heads beneath stained glass light. Confession meant whispered shame in wooden booths for the poor. But in velvet chambers, it was a silent ritual for the rich. Wooden crosses nailed to cottage doors marked peasant faith. In manor prayer rooms, golden crucifixes stood tall. As a simple coffin crossed the muddy graveyard, armored funerals passed beneath cathedral arches. At dawn, the peasant raised hands to the soil, while the nobleman opened his prayer book by the hearth. At sunrise, a peasant child rises from a straw bed in the medieval cold. At the same moment, sunlight filters through stained glass into a noble boy's chamber. With worn sandals and a wool cloak, the peasant walks the muddy fields with his sheep. Meanwhile, the noble boy sits at a walnut desk, beginning his Latin lessons. In the village church, barefoot children kneel on stone floors, tracing chalk letters. While in the manor, a boy in silk tunic learns handwriting from a private tutor. A peasant carves letters into wood beneath a tree, using a sharpened stick. The noble child studies a map of Europe in the family archive. The peasant, apprenticing under a carpenter, cuts his hand but keeps working. In a candlelit room, the noble boy chants Latin hymns beside a monk. In the village, an older brother teaches numbers to his siblings by a stone wall. And in the manor's great hall, the noble child recites Latin before a visiting bishop. In the village square, a woolen crown is gently placed on a young girl's head. This isn't a union, it's a surrender to a new family. In the noble hall, the bride walks in silk. Every step speaks of wealth and bloodline. Kayet lebelek dolu. For peasants, a wedding isn't just about two people, it's a celebration for the whole village. But in the castle, the wedding is pure display. It begins not with love, but with lineage.